Hi students, myself Subramanya. This is my 6th class on the chapter Reproduction in Organisms. In my previous class, I had begun to discuss about the sexual reproduction in organisms. Meanwhile, I had given you the information about the various phases of sexually reproducing organisms. I have told you about the vegetative phase or juvenile phase, reproductive phase and senescent phase. In this class, we are going to consider the discussion of different types of plants based upon their length of lifespan. And also we are going to consider the discussion of the different types of animals based upon their breeding seasons. So before going to start the discussion, students, I think you need to know some of the basic information and terminologies, which are the part of the general knowledge and like the part of the ecology, which you are going to study at the end of this academic year. Students, here in first line, I have written the different seasons: winter, spring, summer, and autumn seasons. These seasons, for example, winter season is the season of the year which is having a very less temperature, which is colder, and most of the time in certain parts of the world it is a chilling. Sub-zero temperatures will be there in the winter season in certain parts of the world, whereas in spring season compared to the winter season it is comparatively hot or warmer season with a lot of humidity and the availability of the water. It's a wetter and warmer season. Whereas the summer season is a hotter season, the temperature soars, rises, and parts of the globe which experience a summer season may also experience a droughtville conditions. Here the availability of the water will be limiting factor for the animals and the plants, right? And in autumn season, again temperature will go down, and next there comes winter season, right? Students, these are the 4 prominent seasons which are experienced especially in the region of the planet Earth. So this is the equatorial line, 0 meridian. This is the Tropic of Cancer. This is Tropic of Capricorn. This is the Antarctic Circle, Arctic Circle. Okay, you have studied this is the temperate region of the North Hemisphere, and this is the temperate region of the South Hemisphere. And the temperate regions of the globe experiences these variations in the environmental conditions as per the seasons much prominently. The seasons are more pronounced here. Whereas if you come to the equator, the intensity of the sunlight and rainfall as well will remain same all across the year. And these variations in climatic conditions based upon the latitudes over the planet Earth, from North Pole to South Pole or from South Pole to North Pole, influences the pattern of vegetation. It is not only the latitude, the distance of landmass from the ocean, from the sea, direction of breezing wind, all influences the pattern of vegetation. And you know, students, animals depends upon plants. Plants are producers. And the way how the plants are there, and that's how the animals are adopted. So the presence of animals, reproduction of animals depends upon the presence of kind of plants and reproduction of plants. Both are interdependent, right? So you have understood about you have got a brief idea about the various seasons, and also you have got the way how, you have understood the way how, to some extent the way how the plants and animals are dependent upon the seasonal variations. And students, here I have written long and short days. Okay. When I use the word day, usually it's a 24-hour time duration. And the day includes a bright period, daylight, and night time. During summer season, what happens? Students, during summer season, 6 a.m. Already sun has risen. You can see daylight. And even until 7 p.m. still sun is not being set. You can still experience daylight. So that the daylight is available from morning 6 a.m. to the 7 p.m. Whereas during winter season, though it is already 7 a.m., still it is a dusky, somewhat darker. Okay? And by 6 or 6:30 p.m., sun has already almost set. The darkness has begun to appear. So that what we can understand here, during summer season, the length of the daylight is longer. During winter season, the length of the daylight is shorter. So, summer season days where a maximal duration of sunlight is available, we consider that as long days. And winter season days when duration of sunlight, daylight is shorter, we consider them as shorter days. It doesn't mean that the duration of day is lesser than 24 hours, not like that. But here the availability of sunlight, the presence of sunlight is something which we are going to consider to be a long day or short day. And these duration of daylight too influences plants during their growth, during their flowering, and the same duration of sunlight also influences the animals. Some may begin their migration based upon the length of the day, okay, and some may begin their reproductive activity. So these seasonal variations and changes in the global climatic conditions are responsible to bring about the variations in flowering pattern, growth pattern, and behavior of the animals. So this you shall have this idea in your mind. And the student, here I have written growing season. Okay, the very meaning of the growing season is that when the plants grows, when they show maximal growth. So one plant can grow when there is availability of adequate amount of water, when there is a rainfall, and when there is a presence of appropriate kind of temperature. And out of these 4 seasons, it is the spring season when there is appropriate warm temperature and adequate availability of rainfall. And it is the spring season during when seeds will take roots and there is a vegetative growth of the plant body. And correspondingly, collaborated to this, even the activity of the animals too will be more during this season. So the spring season is a growing season. At the time of my explanation, if I say growing season, you shall be able to understand that, right? And you see students, another one thing, the growing season do not correspond to the same calendar month in all parts of the globe. The growing season may be a June in one part of the globe, in one particular country, and it can be some other month, calendar month in some other part of the globe. It all depends upon the latitude, okay, and the direction of breezing wind, proximity of the ocean, so on. Calendar month is something different to the seasons, okay. It do not corresponds with the calendar month. That you shall keep in your mind. You see, these students, the growing season, the breeding. What is the meaning of breeding? In animals, breeding is the process of reproduction. The animals, they will sexually interact. They will show mating. Male and female will sexually interact, what we call as a mating, and that is influenced by the hormones, right? The secretion of the hormones is again definitely influenced by the climatic changes. So after mating, they produce eggs, or they may give birth to young ones, and the next generation is followed. So that's something what we call as a breeding. Even in case of plants, the breeding has got a different meaning, like improvising the character, genetic character of the plants is considered to be breeding. But in general, we can say breeding is a production of flower, transformation of the flower into seed and fruit, and sowing seeds to grow next generation plants can be considered as a breeding, plant breeding, right? Okay, and then hormones. Students, you have studied in your first year PUC. Hormones are the chemical messengers produced in the body of the organism, both in plants and animals. In plants, there are hormones like cytokinins, auxins, gibberellins. Some will promote cell division, cell differentiation, development of organs. And in animals, there are the hormones like a growth hormone, testosterone, progesterone. Many other hormones are there which are responsible to control the overall physiological, developmental activities of the body of an animal. Okay? So, with the backup of this information, I think we can understand the topics which I am going to discuss now. Okay, students, with the information backup what we have discussed now, let us consider plants based upon their length of lifespan. Students, have you heard of a plant by the name marigold? Okay, marigold. Definitely you will have seen that. You know rice plant, paddy plant, Oryza sativa, wheat plant. So marigold, rice, wheat, these are all the plants which will complete their life cycle within one growing season. You know what is growing season? Okay? Within one growing season, they complete their life cycle. Okay? So these plants which will complete their life cycle within one growing season, we call them as annual plants. Annual plants. Okay, what are the key points here? It is one growing season. One growing season. Okay, they show vegetative growth. Seeds takes the root, vegetative part, the aerial part will develop in growing season, and at the end of the growing season they show flowering, right? They show flowering, they produce seeds, fruits, and then they die. It is followed by the death. Life cycle is over within a year during one growing season. So these are the annual plants. So what is the point here? Life cycle is completed by one growing season. They show flowering at the end of the growing season. Example is marigold, rice and wheat. Students, these plants shows a flowering only once in their lifetime. If you compare other trees which lives for many years, year after year they show flowering many times, but here it's only one time flowering, so it is also called as a monocarpic plants. They are also called as monocarpic. So you have to add this point to your notes, right? You take your notes, page number 6. The information is there in page number 6, right? You add monocarpic to the annual plants. The plants which shows flowering only once in their lifetime, annuals. Students, there is yet another group of plant. You know, onion, cabbage. So these onion and cabbage plants complete their life cycle in two growing seasons. One growing season in 1 year, and followed by that next year, next growing season. They complete their life cycle in two growing season. I write it here. Two growing season. Okay. These plants are called as biennial. Biennial plants. Right? Annual plants. First one, and the second one is a biennial plants. In first growing season, biennial plants in first growing season, they show vegetative growth. You know what is vegetative growth? Rooting of the seed, development of the aerial part, stem, branches, leaves. The plant will become capable by showing the primary growth. It will grow, elongate in its length, produces flowers, stem, branches. It will become reproductively capable, and it will show flowering in second growing season. Okay, I repeat, biennial plants are the plants which will complete their life cycle in a two growing season. First growing season they show vegetative growth, and second growing season they show flowering, and after flowering they die. Okay, only one time flowering. These are also monocarpic plants. Biennial plants are also monocarpic plants. The example is onion and cabbage. Okay, please add this point to your notes. I will ask you assignment questions. You shall be able to answer, and then I am going to take up neat question discussions. Right. And what are those plants are called which lives for several years, which shows their growth for many growing seasons? They are called as perennial plants. Perennial plants. So you have many examples. I need not write coconut plant, peepal tree, banyan tree. Many plants are there, many trees are there, plants are there, which you can consider as example. So what is the cardinal, very important point here? The important point here is they grow for many growing seasons. Many growing seasons. Or you can also simply consider as they grow for more than two growing seasons, right? So you can categorize the plants into two groups in perennial plants. Some of the perennial plants are shrub-like plants, smaller in size this much. Okay, what happens during unfavorable conditions, like in case of summer, autumn, what happens, winter season, summer season, the aerial part will simply die. Perennial plants, aerial part will die, but the root stock will be surviving in the soil. With the onset of next growing season, that is spring season, from the root stock, a new aerial part will emerge. Okay, though aerial part is not present, but still root stock will be there inside the soil, which is persistent through the unfavorable conditions. These are also perennial plants, right? But whereas in case of large sized trees, the aerial part will not die. Aerial part is a permanent. Large trees, perennial trees do have a permanent aerial part. And this permanent aerial part in the equatorial region, I told you that, where there is a daily rainfall, a sunlight, they will have a green leaves always, all through the seasons. They are evergreen plants, evergreen trees. Whereas in case of a tropical region, like in India, these trees will fall off their leaves, they shed their leaves, so as to prevent the transpiration, in order to prevent the water loss. A sort of local adaptations will be there. So perennial plants may be a shrub-like plants, or maybe a large sized trees, which shows different type of adaptations in a different geographical locations. Okay, students, what are the three type of plants mainly? Annual plants, biennial plants, and perennial plants. And in addition to this, students, we have some more plants which are of special type. So firstly, we have plants what we consider as epihemerals. Epihemerals. Okay. Students, these epihemerals are the annual plants, like these plants, which have one growing season. They are the annual plants, but they complete their life cycle in very less time shorter than one growing season. Okay. So these ephemerals, which will complete annual plants, which will complete their life cycle shorter than a growing season, are adapted to extreme environmental conditions, like in case of desert. So there is a plant by the name Arabidopsis thaliana. I need not write that, it is not required for you. Arabidopsis thaliana, it is a desert epihemeral. Desert epihemeral. So you know, in a desert, droughful condition is much prevalent. There will be a very shorter rainy season, very shorter for few number of days. And this Arabidopsis thaliana, a desert epihemeral, will produce roots. A dormant seed will be there, which will be persistent throughout the drought and warmer season, hotter season. It will be persistent, it will be present in the soil. At once the rainfall occurs, raining occurs, what happens? The seed produces roots, produces aerial part, it will show flowering, produce seeds, seeds will fall down, they go dormant and immediately it will die. So annual plant with very short life cycle, which is completed within a growing season, and so that you can have many number of generations within a year. Okay, and these are considered as epihemerals. Okay, once again, annual plants, biennial plants, perennial plants, and epihemerals. Okay, you have this in page number 5 in your notes. You can refer that. You please keep open your notes. When you watch my video, you underline the points and you write down the question, what are ephemerals? Write the characters of ephemerals. What are annual plants? Give example for annual plants. What are biennial plants? Give example. What are perennial plants? Give example, so on. So I would like to add another one information here, students. Another information. You see here, in case of annual plants, a monocarpic, single flowering plant, biennial plant, again it is monocarpic. Here, a vegetative phase. I told you what is vegetative phase. Starting from seed germination until the flowering, that is the vegetative phase. The vegetative phase can be very clearly defined. Okay, there is a vegetative phase of certain duration of time based upon the species. Different species may have a different duration, and minor variations can be observed, like a 3 month, 4 month, 6 months. Okay, a clear cut vegetative phase, and then flowering takes place, a reproductive phase. And after reproduction, flowering, setting of seeds, fruits, the plant will enter the phase of senescence, that is aging, and finally it dies. Okay, so vegetative phase, reproductive phase, and senescent phase can be very clearly defined in case of annual plants and biennial plants. Whereas in case of perennial plants, they survive for more than one growing season. Each year, after certain level of growth, initially at the beginning point of time, they start to produce the flowers. Every year during growing season or a particular time period of a year, it all depends upon genetic factor and species of plant. At a particular time period of a year, it shows flowering, the flowering stops, and again the vegetative growth continues. Next year, again flowering, then it stops. After production of seeds and fruit, again vegetative growth continues, and like it produces many number of branches. Okay, and many number of leaves may be produced, leaves may fall off, again new leaves may be formed. So here, in case of perennial plants, you cannot clearly distinguish the phases like vegetative phase, reproductive phase, and the senescent phase. Okay, I repeat, in case of annual and biennial plants, there is clear cut vegetative, reproductive, and senescent phase. In perennial plants, you cannot notice or you cannot distinguish these phases clearly, right? Along with these category or type of plant species. So this is all influenced by a geographical climatic conditioning. They have a long history of evolution, and the climate, very climate, okay, topographical features, the type of soil, distance from the ocean, and many other environmental factor influences this. Along with these environmental factors like a long day, short day, availability of the water, duration of intensity of sunlight, along with these environmental factors, even the internal body factors like the hormones. I told you the hormones are chemical substances both in plants and animals, chemical messengers. The hormones too control the activities of all these three phases. What are those factors which influences the various phases of the sexually reproducing sexually reproducing organisms? They are the hormones and environmental factors. In your textbook just they have mentioned, but I have given you the details. What are those environmental factors and how hormones influences the developmental activities, the sexual maturity in the body of the organism, animal or a plant? That you have to go back to first year PUC. You have to refer that particular chapter. Okay students, I cannot discuss all those things here in this context of situation. So now let me take up some of the plant species which show unusual flowering. Okay, let me wipe off this. Okay. So the plants which will show unusual flowering, usual flowering, yearly once flowering, continuous flowering. Here it is unusual flowering. The plants which will show unusual flowering. The first example is the bamboo. Bamboo given in your textbook or agave. Okay. Agave. So this bamboo, agave, these are the perennial species of plants. They grow, their lifetime is so long that they grow for many growing seasons. They survive for more than 2 growing seasons, but they show flowering only once. For example, bamboo, its lifetime is 50 to 100 years, but it will show only once in its lifetime, and then after flowering it will die. So these are perennial monocarpic plants. Bamboo and agave, they are the perennial monocarpic plants, the plants which will live for several years but shows flowering only once in their lifetime. There is another plant which is very peculiar and it is quite interesting. Okay, that's especially in our part of the globe, in South India, especially in the region of Tamil Nadu, Karnataka and Kerala borders, Nilgiri Hills region. There grows a shrubby plant by the name Strobilanthes kunthiana. Strobilanthes kunthiana, or it is also called as a Neelakuranji. Strobilanthes kunthiana, common name is Neelakuranji. In your examination, write the common name of Strobilanthes kunthiana, or that's Neelakuranji, or write the scientific name of the Neelakuranji, Strobilanthes kunthiana. This shrubby plant produces purplish blue color flowers. Purplish blue colored flowers, 12-year ones. It is very strange phenomenon. 12-year ones, it will produce purplish blue colored flowers, an unusual pattern of flowering, right? So 12-year ones, the areas of area where Tamil Nadu, Kerala and Karnataka meet in the Nilgiri hill ranges. Nilgiri means blue mountain. Okay. Blue mountain. What is the meaning of blue mountain? Why it is blue mountain? Because 12 years once when these purplish blue colored flowers bloom, these hilly terrains, hilly areas will turn into a bluish patches. The entire area, the hilly area turn into bluish patches, bluish stretches, and the mountain appears bluish in color. So it is called as a Nilgiri, blue mountain region, right? So these two plants have been given, bamboo and Strobilanthes kunthiana, as an example for unusual flowering. Okay students, now let us consider the category of animals based upon their breeding pattern. Okay students, you know the meaning of the word breeding: the active sexual mating and reproduction. And also I have explained you the breeding take place during favorable environmental condition. What is that favorable environmental condition? Availability of food, proper temperature conditions, availability of water, and the chances of survivability of offsprings. These are all the favorable conditions. And animals like frog, amphibians, example here is frog, and reptile, example here is lizard, shows a breeding, that is sexual mating, active sexual interaction and production of eggs or the young ones only in particular season of the year. Not always, not all around the year. And these animals which shows their breeding activity in one particular season when the situation is favorable, they are called as seasonal breeders. Seasonal breeders. Right? Give example for seasonal breeders: frog and lizard. And these are the animals which will breed, actively engage in sexual activity only during particular season of the year. And I told you that there are the regions over the globe where continuous favorable conditions is there. A tropical region, equatorial region, there is ample availability of vegetation, continuous rainfall, okay, a luxuriant growth of vegetation in the hilly areas, Western Ghats, equatorial region, Amazon basin, and we have got many examples, right? Here, the animals can breed continuously. Right? For example, poultry mice, human beings, humans, they can have baby at any point of year. They reproduce around the year. Okay? And these animals which can reproduce around the year, they are called as continuous breeders. Okay students, so they may ask you a question in your examination like, write the difference between seasonal breeders and continuous breeders. And what are seasonal breeders? Give example. And what are continuous breeders? Give example. In page number 5 of your notes, you have got a very clear explanation, and you can choose the very same sentences to write as answer in your theory examination. And corresponding questions are there in the material what you have chosen in MTG publication, MTG fingertips, which we are going to consider for discussion. Thank you all for listening to me. Goodbye.